Bernard King. You know him, but you don't know him, you know? He's like that one uncle who shows up to Thanksgiving wearing a perfectly pressed shirt, tells two incredible stories about the old days, then vanishes before dessert. You remember something happened. You remember it was important. But here's the thing about forgotten. Sometimes forgotten just means we stopped paying attention. King stood 6'7" and weighed 205 pounds. He played small forward with explosive scoring ability, utilizing long arms and a quick release. He wasn't doing anything fancy. No behind-the-back passes. No windmill dunks for the highlight reel. Just results. King could post defenders up and finish with his back to the basket, attack and finish with either hand, or hit the mid-range jumper. He'd post you up, spin baseline, and launch that turnaround jumper before you realized what century you were in. And the numbers. Oh man, the numbers. In the 1984-85 season, King led the NBA in scoring with 32.9 points per game. You know who else was scoring that year? A 28-year-old Larry Bird averaging 28.7. Some rookie named Michael Jordan putting up 28.2. And Bernard King was cooking both of them, leading the entire league. At age 28. On a Knicks team that won 24 games. Let me repeat that. He averaged almost 33 points per game on a team that won 24 games. That's like being the best engine in a car with no transmission. You're doing everything right, making all the power, but something else is fundamentally broken. But that 1984-85 season wasn't even his peak moment. The peak was Christmas 1984. On Christmas Day 1984, King scored 60 points against the New Jersey Nets, becoming just the 10th player in NBA history to score 60 or more points in a single game. 60. 6-0. He finished 19 of 30 from the field and 22 of 26 from the free throw line, accumulating 40 points by halftime. And they lost, 120-114. King later said about the game, "Whether I scored 15 points or 60 in a game, the bottom line was, did we win? At that moment, I felt total dejection." That's the most Bernard King thing ever. Drop 60 on Christmas Day, a Madison Square Garden record that stood for 30 years, and his main emotion is disappointment because they lost. King explained his approach. "I'd shoot strictly from 9 distinct areas on each side of the floor, along with 4 spots in the middle. Since there were only 5 ways a player can be defended on the wing, I developed 5 moves to offset each defense." The man was playing basketball like it was chess mixed with engineering. He had mapped the court into zones. He had counters for everything. And just a month before Christmas? On January 31st and February 1st, 1984, King became the first player since 1967 to score at least 50 points in consecutive games, dropping 50 on the Spurs and 50 on the Mavericks. Back-to-back 50s. This is your reminder that Bernard King was absolutely, unquestionably, one of the most unstoppable scorers in basketball history. And nobody talks about him. Then March 23rd, 1985 happened. King was chasing Reggie Theus on a fast break when he planted harder than usual to block a shot. His knee gave out. He said, "While you're in the air, you know your career is over." The injury included a torn anterior cruciate ligament, torn meniscus, and lateral condyle fracture of the femur. This was 1985. ACL tears ended careers. Players didn't come back from this. The surgery techniques, the rehab methods, the understanding of sports medicine, none of it was there yet. His physical therapist, Dania Schweitzer, said, "No basketball player has ever made it all the way back from an injury like this." But Bernard King wasn't trying to make it back. He was trying to make it back as an all-star. King missed all of the 1985-86 season and worked 5 hours a day, 6 days a week, for nearly 2 years with his physical therapist. 2 years. In secret. Nobody knew what he was doing or if he'd ever play again. He rehabbed in the basement of his New Jersey home, often waking in the middle of the night sweating so badly he had to change clothes. The Knicks had moved on. They drafted Patrick Ewing. They built a new team. When King came back for 6 games in 1987, averaging 22.7 points, they released him anyway. This is where the story becomes mythology. The Washington Bullets signed him. Most teams figured he was done. A 31-year-old forward with a rebuilt knee, 2 years removed from basketball, his explosiveness gone? That's a parts car. That's something you buy for $800 on Craigslist, cannibalize for the engine, and send the rest to the scrapyard. But King had other plans. King changed his entire playing style to accommodate his diminished explosiveness. Where he once scored mostly from posting up and baseline jumpers, the new King became a face-up player who scored by slashing to the basket. He rebuilt his game from scratch. He reinvented himself. His scoring averages with Washington: 17.2, then 20.7, then 22.4, then 28.4 points per game in 1990-91. Age 34. That last season, he finished third in the NBA in scoring, behind only Michael Jordan and Karl Malone. He made the All-Star team again. Let me say that again because it sounds fake. Bernard King tore his ACL in an era when that meant career over, missed 2 full seasons, came back at 31, rebuilt his entire game, and by 34 was the third leading scorer in the NBA. In 1991, when Jordan was in his prime, when the league was faster, more athletic, more everything, King himself said, "My personal legacy is what I did for 5 hours a day, 6 days a week, to come back from an injury that players were not coming back from. That was a death knell for players' careers. That's my basketball legacy." And you know what? He's right. Over his 14-year career, King averaged 22.5 points per game. He scored 19,655 career points. He made 4 All-Star teams, 2 before the injury, 1 6 years later, and 1 in 1991 when everyone thought he was finished. He was twice named to the All-NBA First Team. He won Comeback Player of the Year. Twice. In different decades. But none of that captures what made him special. Julius Erving, Dr. J himself, said King was the toughest player he had ever faced. Larry Bird said in 1984 that he considered King the best forward in the NBA. Not second best, not top 3. The best. This is Larry Bird, who won MVP that year, saying the guy on the 24-win Knicks was better. Think about that Knicks team. It was Bernard King, Bill Cartwright, a declining Ray Williams, and mainly role players and journeymen. When the 1984 Celtics, a great team by any definition, played them, their strategy was essentially, forget it, King's going to get his 30, just shut down everyone else. Here's what hurts. King never won a championship. He never even made the finals. His peak coincided with those terrible Knicks teams, and by the time Washington made the playoffs in 1988, he was still rebuilding. They lost in 5 games to Detroit. The Knicks' decision to release King in 1987 haunts them. If King had stayed healthy and played alongside Patrick Ewing in his prime, they would have had a true contender to challenge Michael Jordan's Bulls. Instead, we got what-ifs. We got hypotheticals. But maybe that's perfect, actually. Because Bernard King's story was never about championships or finals MVPs or any of that. It was about showing up every single day and being impossibly, relentlessly great. It was about scoring 60 points and feeling dejected because you didn't win. It was about tearing your knee apart, hearing doctors say you'll never play again, and saying, bet. He was someone who averaged 32.9 points a game in an era with no three-point revolution, no spacing, and defenses that could literally punch you in the face. He was someone who came back from a career-ending injury before career-ending injury comeback was even a thing. He was someone who rebuilt his entire game at 31 and became an all-star again at 34. Julius Erving said King was the toughest player he ever faced. Larry Bird called him the best forward in basketball. Michael Jordan grew up watching him. But you probably forgot his name between reading about Giannis's latest 50-point game and arguing on Twitter about whether Draymond should have been suspended again. And that's fine. Not every legend needs to be remembered. Bernard King scored 19,655 points across 874 games, dragging bad teams to respectability, turning good teams into playoff contenders, and proving that sometimes the most impressive thing you can do isn't win. It's keep fighting long after everyone said you should stop. He finished his career 16th on the all-time scoring list. The Hall of Fame inducted him in 2013. His Knicks number 30 hangs in the rafters. His Tennessee number 53 was the first jersey ever retired by the program. And still, somehow, he's underrated. That's Bernard King. The best player you forgot was that good. The scorer who made it look so simple that we forgot it was actually impossible. The comeback that rewrote the medical textbooks. The guy who played basketball like he was personally offended by the concept of gravity. How good was he actually? He was impossibly good. Good enough that, what if he stayed healthy, became one of basketball's great unanswerable questions. Good enough that he changed how we think about injury comebacks. Good enough that he scored 60 points on Christmas Day and considered it a failure. Good enough that, even now, writing this, I'm mad more people don't know. Bernard King. Remember the name. Because basketball already forgot once. And that's one time too many.